All right, welcome to another Vicarious webinar, everyone. Thanks for everyone joining. We've got a really special one today covering vAnalyzer. We're going to go through some uncovering some advanced metrics that can help us to kind of make a little bit more sense of all that vulnerability data and security data that we're dealing with. So yeah, thank you again for joining. We got a couple of folks joining us today. One that's a special guest, so we don't have him up here, but I'll introduce him as well. So we've got myself, Ryan. I'm a solution architect team lead here at Vicarious North America. We've also got Jordan joining us, who I'm really excited to introduce because played a really large part in building out what we're going to be going through today, which is vAnalyzer. And we've also got Griffin, who, like I said, is a special guest, going to be jumping in, showing us a little bit about how this ties back to some pretty cool things. So thank you all for joining. A little bit about what we're going to kind of cover today. What is this session about? We're going to review vAnalyzer. You saw it in the title screen there. You saw it when you signed up, so should be no surprise. But yeah, basically this is a tool that allows us to uncover some of the metrics that your vulnerability management solution creates, namely VRX in this case, of course. But we'll talk about how we could even expand that out to bring in some other data and really kind of make a very powerful solution. If you do have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. We're watching that. We're also going to save a little time for Q&A later. So if you have anything that you would want to see how this applies to your environment, or if there's anything else we can help you answer, feel free to drop that there. We love seeing those. And then let's talk a little bit about the session, how this is going to go today. So we are going to put an emphasis on showing you all the platform live. But before we do, just kind of want to talk briefly about some of the problems that it solves. Why did we create this? What are we seeing in the landscape? Who could use this the most effectively? What types of industries we see using this the most? Some of the popular use cases that they're seeing success with that. And again, going into a demo by Jordan. We're going to be making that pretty interactive and going into a Q&A from there. So yeah, let's jump right in. Like I mentioned, what is the problem? So I kind of alluded to it already. Vulnerability management and really infosec, cyber, anything in tech, just generates a ton of data, and trying to make sense of that, trying to build actions out of that data to solve the challenge very effectively is really where we see a lot of organizations kind of struggle with. Vulnerability scanners have been around for a really long time, but translating that into something that we can actually go and mitigate vulnerabilities is something that still to this day people seem to struggle with, and that's something that we've been trying to tackle as a company and helping out our customers with. But there's always room for improvement there, and the focus of today is this tool that the team here built in order to kind of customize that and get some really actionable insights from some of this data. So just to illustrate that point of vulnerability data, if you join one of our technical training sessions on VRX, you might have seen this slide or one very similar to it. First.org does this every year, where they forecast the number of vulnerabilities. And we can see here that we ended 2024 with just over 40,000 vulnerabilities. One thing that's interesting is, this is coming from NVD. And many of you know, especially if you live here in the States, that NVD has suffered some lack of funding for this challenge of the sheer number of vulnerabilities. They're really not equipped for the task to be able to analyze all of them, assign CPEs. So there's been quite a large slowdown, especially in the last year or so. We've really seen that problem escalate quite a bit. So theoretically, this number is actually far higher than that 40,000 number. Regardless, we are seeing that the projection for this year, for 2025, is going to be greater than 45,000 vulnerabilities. There's a little bit of a margin of error there, as you can see on the graph. But what this takeaway is as we continue on this trend and it keeps ramping up, is that we need to make sure that our teams are well equipped to be able to meet that challenge head on, and we need to make sure that things are very, very scalable. The way that we work today is much more it's accelerated from previous years, right? Where there's more distributed environments, there's more applications than before, there's more operating systems. Things are accelerating extremely quickly, especially now with a lot of generative AI. We're seeing more and more of that. So we expect that this challenge is going to continue, if not accelerate. One of the quotes that they had in this publication that they did is, plan for more time and more cost. Whatever you're spending on your vulnerability management now, be that in staffing, be that in time, that is going to need to increase because of the increased number of vulnerabilities. So yeah, with that, I want to bring in Griffin. Griffin's going to share a little bit. He's got a background working in some compliance standards, helping organizations meet that. So yeah, Griffin, welcome, and thanks for joining.
Thanks, everybody. So as Brian alluded to, in a previous life, I was a PCI QSA. I was a high trust CSF assessor. And with that, companies and organizations that comply to these regulations need the assessor to come in and perform an assessment, validate that they're doing what the controls require them to do. So for PCI, we have requirement 6, which is develop and maintain secure systems. 11 is test security of systems and networks regularly, i.e. a vulnerability management program. And then in high trust, similar control, develop and maintain secure systems and software. And when I was doing these assessments, I found more often than not that when I would get to these client sites and start talking to them through their program, everybody seemed to think they were doing it well. And more often than not, a lot of them weren't doing a lot of it well. The vulnerability management piece, which we could say for another conversation because that's where VRX can help. Today we're focusing on vAnalyzer. And one of the things that most organizations struggled with was the verification piece. Like, can you provide me as your assessor evidence that your vulnerability management program is effective? If I ask to see a sample from a system in your CDE or cardholder data environment that patches have been applied within this timely framework or timely time frame, can you show me that? And most had this amalgamated spreadsheet from disparate tools. They'd have their scanner, their patch system, something else, and they would just cobble this disgusting spreadsheet together. And that didn't give me very much confidence as somebody signing my name to their audit that they're doing it effectively. And that's where we've seen a lot of struggles with this. And this is where vAnalyzer really comes in because it solved a lot of those problems.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's pretty alarming that organizations can struggle to prove that. I can see why with those disparate systems, as you mentioned. But one thing that I found, and you can see on the left-hand side here, where they are becoming more strict in some of these requirements, but I find that many of them are quite vague. Cyber insurance is one that I've seen has kind of accelerated leaps and bounds in terms of attaching specific metrics. I know a lot of people who are purchasing cyber insurance are of course not too happy with that because it's very difficult to achieve. But if we look at a lot of these standards that mention vulnerability management, it's extremely vague in what you need to do. So the fact that you can't even prove that, you're an extremely risky target for a breach or for a ransomware or some other cyber event. I see these compliance standards as kind of the bare minimum and something that we should strive to go beyond. Cool. So yeah, with that, let's talk a little bit about vAnalyzer. What are we doing to help solve that challenge? Yeah, with that, kind of an intro to the platform here. What vAnalyzer is basically a business intelligence tool. There's quite a few of these out on the market that you may be familiar with, something like a Tableau, a Power BI, Metabase, Grafana. There's a lot of different tools that you can use to create these kinds of things. What we've done for our customers is build one out that they can effectively use as a template, and we can support so that they have something that they can, for lack of a better term, hit the easy button on and get something stood up very, very simply. They may not have the resources that an enterprise has to build out a, custom business intelligence tool, this gives them something that is pretty much ready to go. Works very well with our systems. It has a lot of insights and dashboards built out, and Jordan's going to be showing that in a few moments here. Who is this for, though? Who can get the most use out of this? Again, we've built it to work with the data that's being pulled from VRX, and I think VRX does a very good job in and of itself in making that very easy to use. But where we see this is kind of the most useful is those highly regulated industries, like Griffin mentioned, with the cardholder data in industries that require PCI compliance. CMMC is another one. Again, cyber insurance. The list goes on and on. So if you're in one of those highly regulated industries, certainly this is something that I think could aid you in that. Beyond that, if you're a very large organization, things become even more complex. So having something where you can make sense of that is always going to be welcome. In terms of the actual users of the platform, we see mostly this is going to be something that you would associate with kind of your senior stakeholders, the management team, the C-suite, CISOs, that sort of thing, where you could pretty much assume what they're looking to do with this is they're looking to prove compliance, be that to a board, be that to a regulatory body, looking to track trends to make sure things are on track and SLAs and KPIs are being met. But we also see that practitioners get a lot of value out of this because they can identify, some of those things before they have to go and report it upstairs, and kind of just gives them a little bit more granular insights. And with that, some of the popular use cases that we see, and I alluded to a few already, but looking at risks on a specific asset, making a bit more sense of that, ranking vulnerabilities, throughout the organization on any asset, not just with some of the metrics that we provide out of the box in VRX, but also adding some kind of a custom lens on that. How can we look at this data in a way that aligns with our business's goals, which might be very specific or require some custom fine tuning. Looking at trends is another one. This is one that I think we're going to go through quite a bit in the demo portion, but we can look at our all-time performance versus some specific time frame to see, are we improving versus our all-time? Are we on track to meet our KPIs or requirements for our industry, or just for our organizational goals? And if not, what can we do in order to make sure that we are on track for those things? The granular insights, this is one that we had a real world example a couple of weeks ago, where we were speaking with a customer, and the trend from a 30,000 foot view looked like it was not on track to meet what they were looking for, and it actually looked pretty poor. And in this case, it was a service provider where they're using this tool to show their customer the value that they're providing. How are we protecting their network, their endpoints? When we actually went through the tool, we were able to uncover that they actually were doing very well, and there was one or two problematic assets which were offline. They were missing a couple patches, so they were really having a large part in skewing some of the trends to look like they weren't on track, but in fact they were doing very, very well. And then I mentioned this kind of, again, you'll see regulation and compliance coming up time and time again in these types of conversations where we're talking about looking at trends and graphs and metrics, but being able to customize some of the data in a way that aligns with your business needs is really what all of this kind of boils down to. And with that, don't want to spend too much time on the slide. So yeah, I'll welcome Jordan to kick off with the screen share and show us the actual tool. Not sure if it's just me, but having some difficulty hearing you there, Jordan.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
There you go.
All right, sweet. Yeah, so thank you, Ryan. We'll go ahead and jump into vAnalyzer here and take a look at some of the different things that we've built out. And as Ryan kind of mentioned, vAnalyzer is really just a tool at its core. We're just doing some API ingestion into the BI tool to be able to analyze the data within VRX. And that is totally, we can ingest additional data sources as well, down the line. Or if you don't, currently have VRX, we'd say, get a demo with Griffin, but definitely, using this to kind of maybe expand some of your metrics that you're tracking today. And kind of to that point too about the Excel sheets. I know there's some people maybe on this call that really love Excel sheets, but it's just not scalable. So how are we going to solve that problem? And there's two kind of primary, I would say, people that we want to kind of utilize vAnalyzer with, or show a vAnalyzer to. And it's going to be the C-suite, or people, that are doing those audits. And then the other would be the practitioner and kind of the daily troubleshooting actionable steps that we're going to take. So we'll go through some of those different metrics as well. And at the risk of kind of getting into, chart fatigue and everyone's eyes glazing over, I'll show kind of the vulnerability management screen that we have here. As you can see, we have quite a number of metrics. I will go ahead and pick on a couple of them. So you can see here we have our mitigation performance. And we're just calculating, of the vulnerabilities that we've detected over the last 30 days in this case, what is our mitigation performance? How are we doing over the last 30 days? And we have a pretty good number here with my test environment. We can also see we've detected, we have active 248 vulnerabilities that were detected over the last 30 days. We can clear that date filter, which we'll do here in just a minute, but we'll also kind of scroll on down here. We can look at mitigation performance by group, as well as average mitigation time. And that's another thing that I really wanted to kind of dive into. What are the metrics that we're tracking for vulnerability management to know that we're being effective and tell the story? And several of the ones that we have, I can zoom in here. Is that better? Some of the metrics that we have, that we've identified are things like mean time to remediation, or average vulnerability age, and those kinds of metrics and things. So kind of moving on through that, we also have some detailed views that we can go through and kind of get that per asset view. So if we have like a single asset that is most vulnerable, maybe we want to look at that asset first. And again, really the point is to, the point is to put the data in a way that's, intelligent, and we can view the charts right in front of us that we need to access to put the relevant data at our fingertips. So let me dive into an example here of something that we might use vAnalyzer for. So we can see here we have our mitigation performance is 85% over the last 30 days. We have some good vulnerability average mitigation time. So we're mitigating things, but we also, if you scroll down here to the bottom, we have our vulnerability severities and SLA groups. We can see that I have quite a bit of vulnerabilities that are critical over the 60-day and 90-day mark. And maybe we need, we definitely need to address those. That's something that would come up in an audit. We want to make sure that we're covering that basis. So in this case, maybe what we want to do is if we come over here to our, just another graph here, and we drill into our, let me clear my filter. We drill into our criticals, all our critical vulnerabilities here. We can go ahead and see, okay, this is the table that we're looking at for critical vulnerabilities. We can get a distribution by asset name. And right from this point, we can go ahead and tell, okay, so we've got, criticals across several different machines, but there's one machine here that really has a lot of critical vulnerabilities. We can drill into that further. We can get the product information. So if we wanted to see, okay, is it all Firefox? Are there other applications? We can get the distribution on the application, the product. In this case, it is all Firefox. And we can even from here go in and kind of adjust this to get maybe the version information if we want to add, what version is here. And we know we're Firefox version 11. We can go ahead and patch that and do that within VRX. But again, really the point being, we want to put that tangible, actionable data at the fingertips and be able to, track those KPIs and different things kind of along those lines. Any questions so far? I know any questions in the chat, Ryan or Griffin?
Yeah, we did see one in regards to CMMC compliance there, if in regards to having a sales presence in the Fed sector. So yeah, there it is on screen. Thanks, Evan. Yeah, so that's a tricky one. It's definitely something that we are evaluating, with the sales presence side of things. But we have seen that obviously there's quite a lot of buzz around CMMC with there finally being auditors are certified for that in the last, I don't know, what's it, 6 months or so. So yeah, definitely something that we're looking into. I don't have a timeline on that. But yeah, would be happy to connect and see what your specific needs are and how we can maybe help. Definitely, we do see that there are a few points within CMMC that tie to vulnerability management. So we see that there are certainly some synergies there, and I think yeah, it could be a pretty interesting one.
So Jordan, let's say you're working for an organization that's subject to PCI compliance, and I'm your assessor, and I have a list of the systems in the CDE, and I'm doing my sampling, and I say, can you show me the systems in the CDE so I can see how the vulnerability management program's working?
Yeah.
Would you be able to do that with this?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can, kind of right off the bat, we can create a group or, asset group in VRX for that. And then we're just ingesting that data again from VRX. So let's, maybe use workstations as that group or something. So we can go ahead and filter by those specific assets. And then we're going to be able to show the specific data set for those assets. So right from here, we're going to be able to say, okay, our mitigation performance is, all time 93%. So we're doing pretty well on the mitigation side. We can show, kind of from the perspective of what's our mean time to mitigation again, and get into kind of that. Or even the active vulnerabilities we can go into directly from here and say, okay, these criticals, we can look at these. We can look at, again, Firefox. But in this case, we can look at, what is the created at time, when was the patch released, all that kind of fun information, so that we can show that to the, the assessor or auditor and why, that vulnerability hasn't been mitigated yet.
So this allows you to show the mean time to remediation, and you can drill down to specific assets if you needed to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so if we wanted to drill into a specific asset, I'm trying to think if I have that specific one. So like here, this is just a limitation of the BI tool. If we click into this, I believe this is a not, so we can actually drill into that. Yeah, so we can drill into our critical times here if we wanted to see our time values. And then we can even from here, we can filter by our specific asset. I don't think this table has the asset name, but it does have the asset ID, which is bin, but that would be the sample view that we would look at, right? So we can drill into that specific asset and show that. I know this isn't exactly right, but we could refine it to make it show that information. And that's really the point of BI and what we encourage, all our customers to do when they're utilizing, the vAnalyzer tool. Is we're going to have a specific meeting to go through, say, okay, what are the metrics that you want to calculate, that you need to be able to track and show historical, what's kind of happening within the environment.
Nice. And can you export this data?
Yep. So the data is exportable. This is just this is kind of the Metabase flavor of the BI, which is, Metabase is just an open source business intelligence tool that we're using to read the data within VRX in this case. Scott, to your point, we don't have it in the platform today. This is something that is kind of an extra module or add-on, but it is something that we want to add. So that's just saving the data there. We can click on export and export the PDF. But yeah, no, it's definitely something that we're looking to add natively within VRX. We have some plans to do that, and are working towards that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, though. Especially if anyone didn't join right at the beginning. Can we maybe, Jordan, I don't know if you want to highlight about how this is kind of set up, what technologies is using, how can people get access to this?
Yeah, so today we kind of we have this in our GitHub, so it's available there, and we do also offer it as a kind of hosted service where we can host it on your behalf. And like I said, at its core, it's just an API integration. We're taking the data out of VRX and putting it into a normalized way where we can analyze it with a BI tool, whether that be Metabase or BI or Power BI if you have Power BI licensing. So we're really just using the API to kind of ingest all the data. It is containerized, so it's a set of Docker containers that can run. And yeah, we can share the GitHub and we can offer that as a if you want to kind of play around with that, you're welcome to.
Awesome. One other thing I think is really interesting about this type of business intelligence in the larger cybersecurity picture is obviously vulnerability management is an important piece of the overall posture and your stack and your hardening and so on. But there's a lot more to it as well, right? There's your EDR, there's your identity management. There's so many things. I think what's interesting about this type of tool is that we could bring in some additional data sources to that as well, and kind of give you even more insights. I don't think that's something that we have ready for the demo today. Obviously, we'd have a little bit more familiarity and control over that those data streams, being that that's not a inside our platform, but I think it becomes a pretty compelling kind of package to look at your overall posture.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And yeah, being able to really aggregate the data from all your different tools into one place is becoming more and more of a need within the space.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple other questions coming in here that are pretty good. So we were, looks like Victor was asking about licensing for this. So yeah, Jordan had just mentioned, this is available on our GitHub, which also kind of feeds into the next question here we'll go into in a moment. We do offer options around hosting it and support as well. So, those types of things you would have to speak to your local sales representative for. But yeah, there's a couple different options. Basically, we wanted to make sure it's pretty flexible. And again, as I mentioned, Luis, regarding your GitHub question here, we're not going to go through a walkthrough today, but maybe Jordan, can you tell us at least at a high level what that looks like?
Yeah, we've tried to make it easy as far as kind of setting it up goes. You'll need a couple different things. So a VM is preferred if you're going to host it locally, and a VM, a Ubuntu VM, and then we'll obviously need to install Docker in the GitHub. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. There is kind of a walkthrough of getting it set up. You'll need things like an API key for VRX, as well as your VRX dashboard name. But once you have that information, it's pretty simple. We have a set of shell scripts and instructions here. Is this Windows sharing? Let's see. Share this tab. There we go. So yeah, Ubuntu 22.04. And then there are a set of shell scripts basically that are going to install Docker, initialize, which is can ask for your API key, etc. And then the API key instructions, and then going to build the containers and deploy the containers. So that's the basics of it. Like I said, we really tried to make it pretty easy. This is the instructions here on setting up Metabase. If you did want to use Metabase, if you wanted to use Power BI, we do have a template file here that could be used. I believe it's a little bit outdated at this point, so the metrics might not look exactly like what we're looking at here. But we can basically point Power BI or Power BI desktop application to the database and kind of go from there. So that's the general setup of it at that 30,000 foot level.
Yeah, thank you. I think the Power BI option is great if you want to just kind of dip your toe into this and see what type of data you can get. Some of the advantages of the vAnalyzer version is that it's much more continuous, right? So Power BI going to be pretty much a point in time, whereas the vAnalyzer that we're seeing here is every 4 hours, I believe, by default.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you do have any questions, like Ryan said, you can definitely reach out to your local sales rep, or if you're not sure who that is, I'm sure you can reach out to me and I'll find out who that is, or Ryan, or whoever. But yeah, for any of the BI or vAnalyzer, I'm definitely happy to help in getting you set up with that if that's something you're interested in.
So in addition to the highly customizable nature of leveraging the API, are there any pre-built dashboards or reporting that come with one we're offering?
So this dashboard here is one of the templates. So we have a template basically for Metabase and a template for Power BI. So there's two templates that we kind of ship with it. As I mentioned, sometimes people think that this is, they have to view all this data. All the data is fully, within BI, it's fully customizable. You can remove a dashboard if you want to, or remove a metric or something, if there is something that you don't want to see. And kind of along those lines too, it's not only, we didn't get quite into this yet, but it's not only vulnerability management data that we're kind of analyzing here. We also do have, remediation status, as well as asset management information. So we're able to go in and look at, maybe from a remediation side, how are we doing on our tasks, success status? Do we have deferred updates or machines that are, returning a deferred status and not able to install an update? Again, in that, it's putting that same kind of data right at your fingertips, so you can go in and drill in and see, maybe we have an issue with a specific machine that's always deferring, and we want to go check out why that machine is deferring as well.
Looks like we got another couple questions coming in here. So are we tied to Docker for our container for this?
Not necessarily. I mean, our end goal is definitely to move it into the platform, and that's where we're focusing more of our attention. At that point, it would become more of a an add-on module within VRX. So rather than having an outside dashboard, it's all going to be contained within VRX, but not necessarily tied to Docker. The Docker files are in that GitHub as well. So I'm sure they could be translated to a different container system. And it's a Python app that's running the API integration in a Postgres database, so it's not super specific to Docker.
Yeah, nothing proprietary. Cool, and I see Adriel making a guest appearance there. So those of you who weren't sure who to reach out with, there you go. Thanks, Adriel.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I think another thing that's interesting too is, let's go back to the regulatory sort of thing. You're probably not going to give access. Maybe you are. I guess it depends on your requirements. But you're probably not going to give access to an auditor to this type of system. You might want to give them, some reports that are pulling metrics from this. How can we do that? What are some of the export options that we have?
Yeah. So we can export any of the kind of dashboards that we built in this PDF format. Or any of the, and you also see there are some, it's going to be specific to the BI that you're using. With Metabase, they have some embed options. They have some, Power BI, I'm sure has, exports for everything there as well. So if you wanted to export to a PDF or embed it in a Google Doc or something, I'm sure, or Word doc, excuse me. I'm sure you could do that. So yeah, definitely, it's going to be somewhat dependent on the BI tool, but as you can see with Metabase here, we can export individual charts. We can export the full dashboard. If we wanted a CSV file with this data, if we just want to download the PNG of kind of the graph here, we can do that.
Awesome.
And kind of along those lines too, kind of back to one of the questions Griffin asked earlier, on a per asset kind of basis, do we want to be able to detect, what machines are doing? And we can see here, I've got this one machine here that has nothing but deferred statuses. So again, that's going to be a machine that, we want to look at. We're not doing any filtering, so we can see he's never actually succeeded on an update versus, this one who is succeeding and kind of has a mix of a couple deferreds and faileds. But anything that's just going to have, deferreds, and we can kind of put that data all in perspective, maybe make a custom graph to only show machines that have only deferred or never actually run automation or things that aren't getting patched. We can easily identify all those different use cases.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Kind of goes back to that, what I mentioned earlier of identifying a machine that, let's find out why that machine is, kind of skewing our metrics and what machines are kind of causing those problems in the first place. Gives you that much more granular view of things. So yeah, that's really, really helpful. So that actually brings me to a good point. So I mentioned earlier that I think VRX does this very well natively. What are some of the use cases that you're seeing or success stories of, people kind of bringing this in and, you know, going beyond what they already have in our dashboards?
Yeah, so definitely, if there are some existing KPIs or metrics that someone is tracking today that we don't have within VRX, I mean, I think that's definitely a use case that comes up. So maybe we want to show a specific metric or something that is we've been tracking for X amount of time, and we want to keep tracking that. So those kind of KPIs, having a custom-made dashboard can also be super helpful for executives or C-suites that we want to just give them the access to be able to log in. They can check anytime, see how they're doing on that specific dashboard. We can tailor make that to whatever metrics they want to see, or whatever metrics you want them to see, vice versa there, however that plays out within your organization. And then the other use case that we have kind of from the more practitioner side is, what are my next actionable steps that I need to do? So in this case, if I'm administrating this dashboard, I see my success rate is pretty good, but I've got a lot of deferreds, so we need to address that. We can come in and we can check, are those deferreds because the machine is offline? See mostly action time expireds. So machines being offline. We can get more into that too, as far as tracking that asset status under the asset management page here. Let's go over here. My bookmark's not saving right, but that's okay. So we can get into kind of what machines are online versus offline. We can see in this kind of asset trend here, we've got some offline assets that have been offline for a good amount of time. We can drill into those and see if there's a reason, what the last contact date is, all the asset information that's specific to that asset is visible there, as well as right below that. I made this little graph yesterday from the graph above, and this is just basically showing the assets that haven't checked in the last month. So I've got a list here of assets, and as you can see, this is one of the main guys that's deferring updates, and he hasn't been online since December 18th. So we're going to know right away that's the reason that we're getting those deferred updates and not seeing any kind of attempt being made to actually install the updates. The practical, what's my next step that I need to take to make my footprint, cybersecurity footprint better and improve the organization's security is another good use case.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Are you seeing more service providers using this in like a subtenant environment, or would you say more end users, enterprise, that sort of thing, or is it a pretty even split?
It's a pretty even split, I would say. Both from the kind of tenant side or subtenant side with MSPs, we're able to kind of filter those out by asset groups. So if we're using the subtenant builder within VRX, we can basically just ingest the asset groups and subtenants from there, along with larger organizations using different groups for server pools and high availability servers and those kinds of things. We see both for sure.
That's kind of a question I had too. If other different business units were responsible for their team and the endpoints in there, could you customize dashboards for them so they could see only what's under their purview? And can you do additional asset tagging here, or is it all directly tied to VRX?
Yeah, so the asset tagging is all tied to VRX. So we're not doing any editing of the main VRX database here, right? So we're not sending, it's not a read-write API, it's just a read API from VRX. We can do, depending on the BI tool again, but in Metabase we can create custom dashboards and kind of delegate access accordingly. And the end goal being, within VRX, we'd be able to do that as well. So when we bring this into VRX, we can delegate access based on those permissions.
So if you wanted to let somebody see this but not give them access to VRX, you could set it up for them and hand them the endpoint.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So we can go into our admin settings here in Metabase. Metabase has some pretty good permissions levels, but we can, set the permissions, we can set the people, we can delegate access to the specific dashboard if we wanted to, group access and all that kind of stuff.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be one that I wanted to cover there. So yeah, definitely good point with, you mentioned earlier, since it is out of VRX and maybe something this is eventually that will bring some of this data into the platform, if not, the entire vAnalyzer suite into VRX natively. There are benefits to having that outside, one, that we can ingest from multiple sources, and two, we can kind of obfuscate that and split out privileges, that way. So that does give a bit more flexibility, which is nice. We did just have another question roll in here from Claudio. Thanks, Claudio. So he's looking to see if there is any way to see a monthly record of detected vulnerabilities along with a mitigation date. And can we identify which ones have not been mitigated each month? So what is still kind of remaining in that backlog? So Jordan, I don't know if that's something you can do live there.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, I have kind of a collection of things here. So we do have one that's, pre-canned here, the vulnerability burn down, which is going to kind of show detected and mitigated, and detected active, or detected and active, meaning it was either detected that month or is still active in that month. So we can kind of show that. We can see what's being detected and what's being mitigated on a monthly basis. We also do have some trends that I was working on yesterday here. So we can show kind of an all-time vulnerabilities detected versus mitigated. We can drill into either of these. We could overlay them as well. It gets a little bit more complex with the all the different vendor severity levels and stuff, but we can overlay them, or we can go in and look at a specific time frame and see what's being detected on the specific date. So yeah, so we can definitely kind of get into those more detailed, complex requests, and that's just the power of BI and kind of having the business intelligence aspect to be able to drill into the data.
Yeah, fantastic. And yeah, thanks, Claudio, for the great question there. One thing that stood out, I remember, it might have been a couple months ago, Jordan, you mentioned to me that you had shown this to one of our customers, and they brought up a point that this is exactly what they were looking to do, and really no other vendor is doing this. So yeah, I think this is kind of a great tool set that we, again, make it very easy, very flexible, for those cases where you don't have a development staff, you don't have the familiarity with some of these tools, with working with APIs, whatever it might be, to kind of, again, hit the easy button on getting something like this, getting enterprise grade metrics and analytics there. So yeah, kudos to you and to Juan, who also played a large part in building that out.
Yeah, it was definitely a team effort in building it out, and Juan and Joel Deere definitely contributed a ton. So it's been a team effort, but a fun project.
Yeah, definitely. While we're waiting for some more questions, and thanks everyone again for the questions. We were planning on doing them at the end, but it's been great doing them live here. So please, if there are any, feel free to drop those in the chat. But yeah, kind of putting you on the spot here a little bit, and I know your plate's pretty full in your new role, but where do you kind of see this going? Is there anything else that you'd like to add to it?
Yeah.
Bit of a curveball, I know.
Yeah,
we didn't rehearse this one.
We did not, so that's okay though. Definitely including it in the VRX platform, and kind of maximizing it for data aggregation, I think, is kind of the two things that I see as kind of the market need for. So having it single pane of glass, obviously, that's what we always want. And then secondarily, those additional data sources, and then really beginning to dive into the correlation of data sets, from different sources. So that's kind of where we see it going. Yeah.
Sounds great.
Cool. Well, that's pretty much, I think that's all my examples that I had. I don't think that I have any more examples here. Kind of got through all of them there in the questions.
Awesome. Yeah, so thanks everyone again for all the questions. You know, I know we probably went through most of the ones you had there live, which you know, I think was great to kind of walk through some of those together. We did plan to save some time at the end, so if you do have any that you were saving, you know, feel free to drop those now. We'll hang out for a little bit longer here. If we don't see any, then we'll pretty much you know, look to wrap things up. But you know, as some of you had kind of asked, and we pointed out again, thanks to Adrielle as well for chiming in there. If you have any questions about how you can use this, or you know, anything else you saw today, you can reach out to your, you know, point of contact here at Vicarious. If you're not sure who that is, any of us on the call, it's pretty much first name at vicarious.io. So pretty easy. Shoot us an email. You know, if you want to tell us if you enjoyed it too, that's great too. Or if you didn't. Or if you have any ideas for future webinars, we like to do those with our partners, with our customers. So if you want to, you know, join and be up here in the hot seat with us, then that's always a fun time.
On that note, would anybody in the audience be interested in a follow-up session to this where we walk through a setup of vAnalyzer and configuring everything? Everybody press 1 in the comments if that'd be something.
Cool.
Perfect. All right.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, again, really appreciate it. We were looking to ramp these webinars up. They've been a lot of fun. We've got a lot of things kind of cooking, so we're definitely going to be carrying on with this series. Might be monthly, might be bi-monthly. We'll see. Yeah, again, if you want to join in on one, we're always looking for you know, some people on our panel here. Yeah, really been a pleasure. So thanks everyone for joining, taking some time out of your day, and see you on the next one.